something is wrong with Formula One.
Well, it's been a very dull season, it's been a very boring season. I wonder if we can try and make the case for this not being a boring season.
We're at tracks where you're millimetres away from ruining your afternoon for 70-odd laps. If you think that's boring, I can't help you. I really can't.
I choose a different sport, basically.
So F1's just boring, right? Wrong, because just like any other sport, it has its peaks and its troughs. But in quality trim, in its final form, F1's just insane.
Power on the rise, it's a sight to see. Chaos will arrive if you inviting we. You can see, you can feel, you can hear. It's getting real.
And there's Lewis Hamilton slewing into the wall. And oh dear, Roman Grosjean.
We've got a lunatic on the track down the Hanger Straight, 160 miles an hour.
But for those of us with a short memory, we figured this would be as good a time as any to take a trip down memory lane and take a look at the most insane moments in F1 history. Urban and Mika fight, kind of. It's 1999 and talk this year is rife with Scuderia ending their 20-year wait for a Drivers' Championship. But after an incident at Silverstone, Michael Schumacher is sidelined for 6 races.
With Michael Schumacher breaking his leg after a first-lap high-speed crash.
The hopes of the Tifosi rest firmly on the shoulders of Eddie Irvine. And the Irishman will duke it out with Mika Hakkinen in a battle for the Drivers' Championship that will go down to the wire. But this was a different era for F1. Sworn enemies inside the cockpit? Oh, absolutely. But off the track, there was a camaraderie. These guys could have a laugh. And nowhere was this more evident than after qualifying at the Canadian Grand Prix. Nowadays, all we get from the drivers is cookie-cut answers. Back then, it was a bit different. Whilst Hakkinen was answering questions, the Irishman would interrupt him abruptly. 2 title contenders, commercial sponsorships be damned, would have a fight of a different variety. A water fight.
That's it. Sorry.
Absolute chaos. But this serves as a pleasant reminder that Cyndi Lauper apparently had it wrong, because F1 drivers too just want to have fun. Hakkinen crying in the woods. 1999 in the Italian Grand Prix, Hakkinen starts on pole and carves out a commanding 8-second lead. The Finn looks like a dead cert to take his 5th checkered flag that season and extend his lead in the championship. But in F1 we all know that anything can happen, and it usually does. Finn gets a bit over-eager with the loud pedal, oversteers and beaches it at the second chicane. But it's what comes next that's insane.
Now he's crying his eyes out in the pits, in amongst the trees. Hakkinen absolutely distraught.
Because it wasn't just that the Finn had seized defeat from the jaws of victory, oh no, it was the extent of the opportunity missed that had the Finn overcome with emotion. A moment had brought the champion to his knees, and these weren't tears of happiness. Mika Hakkinen was sobbing because he thought he'd blown the championship. You know, Hakkinen's would be a brilliant career. He'd go on to win his 2nd consecutive championship that season. But for many fans, this was the moment. This is how they'd remember Hakkinen.
Real men never cry.
Back against the wall. Listen, if you think of wingmen in F1, above all others, one man fits the bill. That man's name is Rubens Barrichello. Because between 2000 and 2004, no one was more dependable than the Brazilian. Because Rubens had that perfect balance. He was fast enough to protect Schumacher from the McLarens, but not fast enough to challenge the Ferrari #1. They were the perfect 1-2 punch. But that's not to say that they didn't have their moments. Think the Austria controversy where Barrichello was ordered to move aside for the charging Schumacher, even though Schumacher was so far ahead in the championship at that point that it was never going to matter. But for the Schumacher-Barrichello moment that makes this list, neither one of them was at Ferrari. It's 2010, the Hungarian Grand Prix. Schumacher, now at Mercedes, is defending a charging Barrichello, now at Williams. This time though for 10th, not 1 and 2 like back in the Ferrari days. So you'd think the Regenmeister might have mellowed a tad. Schumacher mellowed? Not a chance. Schumacher did the only thing he's ever known to do, defend his position with his life, pushing Barrichello within millimetres of the wall.
Belgium.
I mean, it's borderline this, because it would have been a humongous, potentially life-threatening accident. But truth be told, this is just one of many incidents that punctuated the career of the 7-time champion. You could accuse Michael of a lot of things, but one thing that he wasn't was uncommitted. Alonso's Plan B. 07 was a year of utter chaos. It was Hamilton's rookie season, and this was the year of Spygate. But for all of this season's insane moments, none was more insane than this, because the tension between the McLaren pairing of Alonso and Hamilton had been building up to this point. Lewis nailed his teammate on the very first corner of his very first lap in F1. The audacity of youth. Monaco, team principal Ron Dennis had called for a ceasefire, but the man from Stevenage continued to drive at 10 tenths. The explosion that was always going to happen that year happened in Hungary, when in quali, on his fuel burn run, it was Alonso's turn to have track position. Lewis, though, he wasn't playing ball, was he? And already aggrieved at what he perceived to be McLaren's British bias, the man from Oviedo took matters into his own hands.
And there's Lewis Hamilton queuing up behind him. And have they raised the lollipop to let Alonso out? Yep, they want him out of there. Now Alonso's not getting on with it. Only a minute and 40 to go. Is he blocking Hamilton here?
Those rather strange delays before you went out for both runs. Was that your decision or the team holding you back?
Team was holding me back.
No more Mr. Nice Guy, said Alonso. Enough was enough. He delayed leaving the pits long enough to prevent Lewis getting another hot lap. I mean, whatever you think about the dude's personality, this is weapons grade skullduggery. God tier race savvy. He's done the timing maths there in real time in the cockpit, independent of any race engineer. Insanity, if ever I saw it. Flat for Eau Rouge. The knock on Jacques Villeneuve, some say, is that he had all of his dad's bravery, but only half of his skill. And after his championship win in '97, he'd struggle in a BAR, a car that he just couldn't get to grips with. But just like his old man Gilles, shy away from challenge, not in his vocab. It's 99, Spa. Only 1 year earlier, Villeneuve managed to walk away from a humongous incident at one of the most dangerous places on a racing calendar.
Jacques Villeneuve is no stranger to big accidents. Last year in Belgium, driving for Williams, the Canadian had a huge off at Eau Rouge, although his car left the circuit at a tremendous rate of knot.
Eau Rouge. But a normal human being, Jacques Villeneuve was not. On the back of some minor changes to the track, Villeneuve was convinced that Eau Rouge was doable, full throttle. So confident was Jacques in his conviction that he and his teammate Ricardo Zonta, they'd make a deal, that at the very least they both attempt it. Villeneuve went first.
And that was the deal. Both drivers would attempt the daunting corner without lifting, and the result was almost a carbon copy of last year's accident.
And the only thing more insane than this is that his teammate immediately afterwards went out and tried it still.
When the session restarted, Ricardo Zonta went straight out. The Brazilian didn't back off from the challenge and suffered an even more spectacular accident than Villeneuve.
With exactly the same outcome. Of course, with two cars written off in one session, safe to say that team boss Craig Pollock was not a happy camper. Rosberg caps back. It's fair to say that the Hamilton and Rosberg story ebbed and flowed. But before there was Monaco.
But what about in terms of mending bridges with your friend?
Well, we're not friends.
Before there was Barcelona, there was Austin. It's 2015, it's the US Grand Prix. It's Rosberg versus Hamilton. These are the two championship rivals now. Distant in the memory is the friendship the two once shared, but from two grown men who want the same thing. What else would you expect? At Austin, the Mercedes pair would battle it out on track. Lewis would force Nico wide into turn one. But Nico would battle back and go on to eke out a lead over his rival. But a bad lockup from the German would hand victory on a plate to the Brit. And after a ding-dong back and forth, to throw away a win like that, understandably, Nico wasn't best pleased. And so in the cool-down room, the mood between the two was frosty. But these guys were once brothers in arms, remember? They toured the circuit together. Lewis, with tongue very firmly in cheek, throws the second place cap to his rival. Nico doesn't like that. And then this happens. The animosity between the pair had finally boiled over in front of the eyes of the watching world. This was insane, man. The relationship between the childhood besties would never be the same. And the rest, as they say, is history. Webber just took off. 2010, the European Grand Prix. Mark Webber starts second on the grid behind his teammate Sebastian Vettel. But Red Bull's hopes of a 1-2 were punctured quickly on the back of a catastrophic start from the Aussie. He dropped down to 9th. Desperate to recover down the back straight, the Aussie would lock in on the Lotus of Kovalainen. Webber goes to put a wheel up the inside, and then this happened. Caught in two minds at 190 miles an hour, Webber's front left would introduce itself to Kovalainen's rear right, catapulting the Aussie into the air 747 style. A backflip and a hefty impact later, and Webber's Red Bull would come to rest in the tyre barrier. I mean, it's a weapons grade incident, this, if ever I've seen one. But testaments to improvements in safety, somehow Webber walked away. Oh, Mr. Webber, how the racing gods were kind to you that day. Slipstream. 2019 Monza, the Temple of Speed. So called because F1 cars are at full throttle nearly 70% of the lap. Oh, it's a fast circuit, all right. And so around here, a toe matters more than most, and so too does your place on the grid. It was no surprise then in 2019 when, after a pause to clear a crash, in a final minute of quali, 9 drivers queued up behind each other. Each driver desperately not wanting to be the sacrificial lamb and give a toe to the rest of them, and so anywhere up to 2/10. Problem here was that time was against them, and of the 9 on the track, only Sainz and Leclerc would cross the line before the time for that session elapsed. 7 drivers had double bluffed themselves out of a hot lap. Chaos. The very fastest drivers in the world going, well, very, very slowly. Buemi gives you wings. Ex-Red Bull driver Sebastian Buemi was not a bad peddler by any stretch of the imagination. He's a 3-time Le Mans winner, Formula E champ and World Endurance champ. But even a god-tier driver like Buemi can't drive a car without wheels. He's 2010, the Chinese Grand Prix, and the Toro Rosso driver is full beans down the back straight. He hits the stop pedal, and this happens. His front suspension wishbone fails. His front wheels take a leave of absence. The Swiss driver at this point is no more than a passenger, but as the Toro Rosso grinds to a halt, his driver instincts take over and he's still trying to steer it away from the barrier. That Sebastian Buemi walked away from this is a miracle, because the incidents, quite frankly, just don't get more insane. If you enjoyed that one, you'll love this one. The 10 most controversial interviews in all of F1 history.